Tonight, a woman will die in a dark alleyway in Chicago, or she will meet the most dangerous man in the city. Blood in her mouth, a knife reflecting the neon lights, and a 6-year-old boy waiting for her to come home, but she may never return. This is a story of mercy, violence, and salvation emanating from the darkest depths. Watch to the end, hit like, and comment where you're watching from so I know how far this story has traveled the world. Now, let me tell you what happened on that fateful rainy night. The rain came down like punishment. Arya Bennett ran through the alley behind Sal's diner with blood pooling in her mouth and her left eye swelling shut. Her sneakers splashed through puddles of oil and garbage water. Broken glass crunched under her feet. The brick walls on either side pressed close enough to trap the stink of rot and piss, and somewhere behind her Derek was still coming. She could hear his boots. Heavy, steady, confident. He wasn't running anymore. He didn't need to. He knew she had nowhere left to go. Arya's ribs screamed with every breath, her vision blurred. She'd taken the first punch in the diner parking lot 20 minutes ago when she told Derek it was over for good this time. No more chances, no more apologies, no more late-night calls where he cried and swore he'd changed. She was done. He'd smiled at her. That smile was the worst part. Then he'd grabbed her by the throat and dragged her into the alley. And Arya had realized with perfect cold clarity that Derek Wells had finally decided to kill her. She slammed her hand against the chain-link fence blocking the far end of the alley. Locked, rusted, too high to climb with her ribs broken like this. She spun around, back pressed to the wet metal, and watched Derek's silhouette step into view beneath the flickering neon sign for Sal's famous all-night breakfast. He had a knife now, long, serrated, the kind you used for gutting fish. "You really thought you could just walk away from me?" Derek's voice was calm, almost gentle. That scared her more than the knife. "After everything I did for you? After I let you and that fucked-up kid live in my apartment rent-free for 6 months? Arya spat blood onto the wet pavement. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to ball them into fists. "Ethan's not fucked up. And you didn't let us stay out of kindness, Derek. You liked having someone to hit when you got drunk." Derek tilted his head. Rain dripped off his hood. "You think anyone else is going to want you? A broke-ass waitress with a dead sister and a retarded nephew who doesn't even talk?" The word hit her like a slap. Ethan wasn't retarded. He was traumatized. He was 6 years old, and he'd watched his mother, Arya's only sister Maggie, die in a car accident 18 months ago. And the shock had locked his voice somewhere deep inside where Arya couldn't reach it, no matter how many times she begged him to say something, anything, even just her name. But Ethan was still perfect. He was all she had left. And if Derek killed her tonight, that little boy would wake up alone in their shitty studio apartment with no one coming to get him until child services showed up 3 days later. "Stay away from us," Arya whispered, her voice cracked. "Please, Derek, just let me go." Derek laughed. He stepped closer. The knife caught the neon light. Red, then blue, then red again. Arya pressed harder against the fence. Her heart hammered so loud she could hear it over the rain. She thought about Ethan's face, his big dark eyes, the way he held his stuffed rabbit every night and stared at the ceiling like he was waiting for his mother to walk back through the door. She thought about dying here, alone, in the garbage, while her nephew waited for a woman who would never come home. Then headlights cut through the mouth of the alley. Bright, white, blinding. Derek froze. Arya squinted through the rain and saw a black SUV rolling to a stop at the curb just beyond the alley entrance. The engine purred. Expensive. The kind of car that didn't belong in this part of Chicago at 2 a.m. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Dark suit. No umbrella at first. Then one of his passengers handed him a black one, and he opened it with a smooth mechanical snap. He stood there for a moment, backlit by the SUV's headlights, looking into the alley like he was deciding whether what he saw was worth his time. Arya couldn't see his face, but she saw Derek turn toward the stranger, and she saw the knife still glinting in his hand, and she knew with terrible certainty that this man, whoever he was about to get himself killed trying to be a hero. "Keep walking," Derek called out. His voice had an edge now, nervous. "This doesn't concern you." The man didn't move. He just stood there beneath his umbrella, rain hammering the fabric, staring into the alley with the kind of stillness that made Arya's skin crawl. Then he spoke. Put the knife down. His voice was quiet, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to yell because it knew you'd listen anyway. Derek laughed again, but it sounded wrong this time. Forced. Fuck off, man. I'm not telling you again. The stranger tilted his head slightly. You won't need to. He made a small gesture with his free hand, just a flick of 2 fingers, and suddenly 2 more men stepped out of the SUV behind him. Big men. Professional. They moved like soldiers. Derek's grip tightened on the knife. I said, fuck off! He lunged. Not at Arya, at the stranger. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. The first man caught Derek's wrist mid-swing and twisted it sideways with a crack that echoed off the brick walls. The knife clattered to the pavement. The second man drove a fist into Derek's ribs so hard, Arya heard the air explode out of his lungs. Derek folded, dropped. His face hit the wet concrete and bounced once. Then silence. Just the rain. The stranger stepped into the alley, umbrella still perfectly angled over his head, and walked past Derek's groaning body like it was a pile of trash. He stopped 3 feet from Arya and looked at her for the first time. Gray eyes. Cold. Old scars behind them. He was maybe 40, clean-shaven, expensive suit tailored to fit like armor. His face was handsome in a severe way. Sharp jaw, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, the kind of bone structure that suggested money, power, and violence kept carefully under control. Arya realized she'd stopped breathing. Are you hurt? He asked. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. But there was no warmth in it, just efficiency. Arya nodded, then shook her head. Then nodded again because her ribs were on fire, and she could still taste blood in her mouth. The man's gaze flicked to her swollen eye, her split lip, the bruises already forming on her throat where Derek's fingers had dug in. Something shifted behind those gray eyes. Not anger, colder than that. He looked back at Derek, who was trying to push himself up onto his hands and knees. One of the bodyguards stepped forward and pressed a boot against Derek's spine, pinning him flat. What's your name? The stranger asked Arya. Arya? Do you want him arrested, Arya? She blinked. What? I can have the police here in 4 minutes. He'll be charged with assault and attempted murder. You'll need to file a report. There will be questions, lawyers, court dates. He might make bail. He might come looking for you again. Arya's stomach twisted. She knew Derek's family. His brother was a cop. His uncle was a union boss. They had connections, money, lawyers who knew how to make cases disappear. Or, the stranger continued, I can make sure he never bothers you again. The words hung in the rain. Arya stared at him. What does that mean? The man didn't answer. He just looked at her with those cold gray eyes and waited for her to understand. And she did. She understood perfectly. This man wasn't offering to call the police. He was offering something else entirely. Arya's pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to walk away, to call 911 and let the system handle this like a normal person. But the system hadn't protected her before. It hadn't stopped Derek from showing up drunk at her apartment 6 times in the last month. It hadn't stopped him from following her to work, from threatening Ethan. And it sure as hell wouldn't stop him from finishing what he started tonight. I have a nephew, Arya heard herself say. He's 6. He's alone right now. If I don't come home, where is he? North Side, Miller and 5th, apartment 3B. The man pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. 10 seconds later, he looked up. Someone will check on him. He'll be safe until you get back. Arya's throat tightened. Who are you? My name is Lucian Moretti. He said it like she should recognize it. She didn't, but Derek did. Even from the ground, pinned beneath a boot, Derek's eyes went wide. Holy shit! You can't... My brother's a cop, man. You can't just... Lucian didn't look at him. He kept his gaze on Arya. Do you want him gone or not? Arya looked down at Derek, at the man who'd strangled her, who'd threatened to burn her apartment down with Ethan inside, who told her 100 times that if she ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure nobody found her body. She thought about Ethan, safe, free, never having to see Derek's face again. Yes, she whispered. Lucian nodded once. He turned to the bodyguard holding Derek down. Take him to the warehouse. Make sure he understands the terms. If he ever comes near her again, he disappears, permanently. The bodyguard nodded. Derek started screaming. Arya turned away before they dragged him to the SUV. She pressed her hands to her face and tried to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. What had she just done? Who was this man? What kind of person had the power to make someone disappear with a single phone call? Arya. She lowered her hands. Lucian was standing closer now, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when he looked at her injuries. "You need a doctor," he said. "I can't afford—" "I'll take care of it." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she meant it, but she needed to know. People didn't just stop in alleys to save strangers, not in this city, not at 2 a.m, not men who drove cars worth more than she'd make in 5 years. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I can." That was it. No explanation, no justification. Just 3 words that somehow felt more honest than any lie he could have told. Arya stared at him. Rain dripped off her hair. Her ribs throbbed. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. And for the first time in years, maybe the first time in her entire life, someone had stepped between her and the violence without asking what she could give them in return. "I have to get back to Ethan," she said quietly. "I'll take you." "You don't have to. I'll take you." It wasn't a request. Arya nodded. Lucian gestured toward the SUV. One of his men opened the back door. Arya climbed in, her wet clothes squelching against the leather seats. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and gun oil. Lucian slid in beside her. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Arya watched the alley disappear through the rain-streaked window. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew she should be terrified. She'd just gotten into a car with a man who could make people vanish, who had bodyguards and warehouses and the kind of calm, cold authority that only came from doing terrible things for a very long time. But she wasn't scared. She was exhausted. "There's water in the console," Lucian said. Arya opened the compartment between them and found bottled water, tissues, and a first aid kit. She unscrewed the cap with shaking hands and took a long drink. The cold water stung her split lip. "Your nephew," Lucian said. "What's his name?" "Ethan." "How long have you been taking care of him?" 18 months. Since my sister died." Lucian nodded. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't offer empty comfort. He just sat there in the dark car, staring out the window at the rain-soaked streets. And somehow, that was better than any condolence she'd heard at Maggie's funeral. "He doesn't talk," Arya added. She didn't know why she was telling him this. "Not since the accident. The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with him. It's just trauma, I guess. Sometimes I think he's forgotten how." "He hasn't forgotten." Arya looked at Lucian. "How do you know?" "Because forgetting would be easier." The words landed heavy between them. Arya wanted to ask what he meant, what he'd forgotten, what trauma lived behind those gray eyes that made him sound like he understood exactly what it felt like to lose your voice. But the SUV was already pulling up outside her building. The apartment complex looked worse than usual in the rain. Cracked siding, broken porch lights, half the mailboxes hanging open like gutted fish. Arya had hated this place from the day she moved in, but it was all she could afford on a waitress's salary. Lucian's driver got out and opened Arya's door. She stepped onto the curb and looked back at Lucian. "Thank you." He nodded. She turned toward the building. "Arya?" She stopped. Lucian leaned forward slightly, just enough that the interior light caught his face. "If you need anything, if Derek's family comes looking for you, if the police ask questions you can't answer, call this number." He handed her a plain white card with a single phone number printed in black ink. No name, no logo, nothing else. Arya took it. Her fingers were still shaking. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. Because she still didn't understand. Because men like Lucian Moretti didn't just hand out favors to broken waitresses in the rain. Lucian leaned back into the shadows. "I told you," he said quietly. "Because I can." The door closed. The SUV pulled away. Arya stood on the curb, soaking wet and bleeding, clutching a stranger's phone number in her fist. Then she turned and ran into the building. Ethan was asleep on the couch when she opened the apartment door. Relief hit her so hard she almost collapsed. She locked the door behind her, chain, deadbolt, everything, and crossed the tiny living room to where Ethan lay curled beneath his favorite blanket. His stuffed rabbit was tucked under his chin. His dark hair fell across his forehead. He looked peaceful, safe. For now. Arya knelt beside the couch and brushed the hair back from his face. He didn't wake. She pressed a kiss to his forehead and whispered, "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Then she limped into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was a mess. Left eye swollen, almost shut. Split lip still bleeding, purple bruises blooming across her throat like ink blots. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd barely survived the night. She stripped off her wet clothes and stood under the hottest shower she could stand until the water ran clear. Then she wrapped herself in a towel, took 2 Advil, and sat on the edge of the bathtub with Lucian's card in her hand. She should throw it away. She should forget this whole night ever happened. She should go back to her normal life, work at the diner, take care of Ethan, hope Derek stayed gone this time. But she knew he wouldn't. Derek's family would come asking questions. His brother, the cop, would start sniffing around. Someone would want to know where Derek went, and when they couldn't find him, they'd come looking for the last person who saw him alive. They'd come for her. Arya stared at the phone number, 10 digits, a lifeline, or a noose. She didn't know which yet. She found out 3 days later. It was mid-afternoon on a Tuesday when the knock came. Arya was in the kitchen making grilled cheese for Ethan when someone pounded on the apartment door hard enough to rattle the frame. "Chicago PD, open up!" Arya's stomach dropped. She looked at Ethan. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his crayons, drawing another silent picture of his mother. He didn't look up at the shouting. He never did. The pounding came again. "Ms. Bennett, we know you're in there." Arya wiped her hands on a dish towel and walked to the door. She checked the peephole. 2 cops. One of them was Derek's brother. She recognized him from the photos Derek used to show her. Same square jaw, same mean little eyes. Officer Ryan Wells. He was in uniform, hand resting on his belt near his gun, looking like he wanted any excuse to use it. Arya unlocked the door but left the chain on. "Can I help you?" Ryan Wells smiled. It was Derek's smile. "Yeah. You can help me find my brother. I don't know where he is." "Bullshit. You were the last person to see him. Sal from the diner said Derek followed you outside Thursday night and neither of you came back. He attacked me. I got away. I don't know where he went after that." Ryan's smile disappeared. "You got away. From my brother, a guy who played college football and outweighs you by 80 pounds. I got lucky. You got help." Ryan leaned closer to the gap in the door. "I checked the cameras across the street, saw a black SUV parked outside the alley, saw men dragging someone into the back. Want to explain that?" Arya's heart hammered. "I want you to leave. I want my fucking brother back. Then file a missing persons report." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You think you're smart? You think some mobbed-up asshole with a nice car is going to protect you forever?" Arya didn't answer. Ryan stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "Derek told me about your nephew. Said the kid's a little slow, said he doesn't talk, said someone should probably check if you're fit to be raising a child on your own." Ice flooded Arya's veins. "Stay away from Ethan." "Then tell me where Derek is." "I don't know." Ryan smiled again. "Guess we'll be seeing a lot more of each other then." He turned and walked away. The second cop, younger, uncomfortable, lingered for a moment. "Ma'am, if you know anything—" Arya slammed the door. She locked it. She pressed her back against the wood and slid down to the floor, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. They were going to take Ethan. Derek's family had connections. Lawyers, judges. They could make her life hell. They could call child services. They could twist the truth until she looked like an unfit guardian, and then they'd rip Ethan away from her and put him in foster care, where she'd never find him again. She pulled Lucian's card out of her pocket, stared at the number. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost couldn't dial. But she did. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. "Yes?" Not Lucian. Someone else. Male. Professional. I need to talk to Lucian Moretti. He gave me this number." "Your name?" "Arya Bennett." Silence. Then, "Hold." 30 seconds passed. Ethan walked into the living room and stood in front of Arya, staring down at her with his big dark eyes. He was holding his rabbit. He looked worried. Arya tried to smile. "It's okay, baby. Everything's okay." The phone clicked. "Arya." Lucian's voice, calm, controlled, like he'd been expecting her call. "They came," Arya said. Her voice cracked. "Derek's brother. He's a cop. He knows something happened. He threatened to take Ethan from me. He said, 'Where are you?' 'Home.' 'Are they still there?' 'No, they left, but they're coming back. I know they are.'" Silence on the other end. Then Lucian said, "Pack a bag. Clothes for you and Ethan. Essentials only. Be ready in 20 minutes. "What? Where am I? I'm sending a car. You're not safe there anymore." "I can't just leave. I have a job. Ethan has school." "Arya." Lucian's voice dropped lower, quiet, final. "They're going to hurt you, or they're going to take your nephew, or both. You called me because you know that. So pack a bag and be ready when my driver arrives." Arya closed her eyes. She thought about Ryan Wells's smile, about the cameras, about the men dragging Derek into the SUV, about the fact that she'd crossed a line 3 nights ago that couldn't be uncrossed, and now she was standing on the wrong side of it with nowhere left to run except deeper into the dark. "Okay," she whispered, 20 minutes. The line went dead. Arya lowered the phone and looked at Ethan. He was still staring at her, waiting. She stood up, legs shaking, and took his small hand in hers. "We're going on a trip, baby," she said. "Just for a little while. Can you help me pack?" Ethan nodded. He didn't speak, but he squeezed her hand. And somehow, that was enough. The black SUV arrived exactly 20 minutes later. Different driver, same professional silence. Arya climbed into the back seat with Ethan beside her, clutching their duffel bag like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. Ethan held his rabbit. He watched the city slide past the window with those big, quiet eyes. They drove north, out of the city, past the suburbs, into farmland and forest where the houses grew farther apart and the streetlights disappeared. Arya's pulse hammered. "Where are we going?" The driver didn't answer. 40 minutes later, the SUV turned onto a private road lined with oak trees. A gate appeared ahead, tall, iron, expensive. Security cameras mounted on both sides. The gate opened. They drove through, and Arya saw the house. No, not a house. An estate. 3 stories of stone and glass rising out of perfectly manicured grounds, fountains, gardens, a circular driveway where another SUV was already parked, lights glowing behind tall windows, the kind of place Arya had only ever seen in magazines. The driver pulled up to the front steps and parked. He got out and opened Arya's door. She climbed out slowly, Ethan's hand still locked in hers. The air smelled like rain and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere in the distance she could hear water running. A fountain, maybe. Or a stream. The front door opened. Lucian Moretti stepped out. He was dressed more casually now. Dark slacks, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. But he still moved like a man who owned every inch of space around him. His gaze went to Ethan first, then to Arya. "You're safe here," he said. Arya didn't know whether to believe him, but she was out of options, so she nodded. And she followed Lucian Moretti into the house where her entire life was about to change forever. The inside of Lucian Moretti's house looked like something out of a dream Arya didn't know she was allowed to have. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath her wet sneakers. A crystal chandelier hung from a ceiling so high she had to tilt her head back to see where it ended. Oil paintings lined the walls, expensive ones, the kind that belonged in museums. Everything gleamed. Everything smelled like money and lemon polish and something else she couldn't name. Safety, maybe. Or the illusion of it. Ethan's hand tightened in hers. Arya looked down. The boy was staring at everything with wide eyes, his rabbit clutched to his chest. He took a small step closer to her leg. "This way," Lucian said. He led them through a hallway lined with more art, past a dining room with a table that could seat 20, and up a curved staircase with an iron railing that probably cost more than Arya's entire year of rent. Her duffel bag felt heavier with every step. She didn't belong here. Ethan didn't belong here. This was a mistake. But she kept walking. Because what choice did she have? Lucian stopped at a door on the 2nd floor and pushed it open. "You'll stay here." Arya stepped inside. The room was bigger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed with white linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. Windows overlooking gardens she could barely see in the dark. A bathroom attached. She could see marble counters and a bathtub deep enough to drown in. Ethan's eyes went straight to a shelf in the corner stocked with books and toys. "There's a smaller room connected," Lucian said, nodding toward another door. "For Ethan, or he can stay with you, whatever he's comfortable with." Arya set the duffel bag down. Her hands were shaking again. "How long are we supposed to stay here?" "As long as it takes." "Takes for what?" Lucian looked at her. His gray eyes were unreadable. "For Derek's family to stop looking, for the police to move on, for you to figure out what comes next." "And what if they don't stop looking?" "They will." The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Arya crossed her arms over her chest. "You can't just make people disappear forever. Someone's going to ask questions. Someone's going to come looking for answers. Let them look. You don't understand. Derek's brother is a cop. He has connections. He knows I'm involved. He's not going to just—" "Arya." Lucian's voice cut through her rising panic like a blade. "I've been making problems disappear for 30 years. Ryan Wells is not going to find you. He's not going to find Derek. And if he tries, he'll regret it." The words should have sounded like a threat. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Arya stared at him. "Who are you?" Lucian's jaw tightened slightly. "Someone who knows how to keep you safe." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you need right now." Arya wanted to argue, wanted to demand real answers, wanted to grab Ethan and walk out the door and pretend none of this had ever happened. But Ethan had already crossed the room to the bookshelf. He was touching the spines of the books gently, carefully, like he was afraid they'd break. He pulled one out, a picture book about trains, and sat down on the floor with it open in his lap. He looked calm. For the first time in days, he looked calm. Arya's throat tightened. "There's food downstairs if you're hungry," Lucian said. "The kitchen is always stocked. Help yourself to anything." "I'm not hungry." "You should eat anyway." "I'm fine." Lucian studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "If you need anything, pick up the phone on the nightstand and press 0. Someone will answer." He turned to leave. "Lucian." He stopped. Arya wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't turn around. "I told you already. Because you can. I know, but that's not a reason. That's an excuse." Silence stretched between them. Then Lucian looked back over his shoulder. "Maybe that's all the reason I need." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Arya stood in the middle of the enormous bedroom, shaking, exhausted, and more confused than she'd ever been in her life. But she didn't sleep. She lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan's soft breathing from the smaller room next door. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every shadow that passed the windows made her heart hammer. She kept expecting Ryan Wells to kick the door down, kept expecting Derek to crawl out from under the bed with that knife in his hand. But nothing happened. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Around 4 in the morning, Arya gave up on sleep and slipped out of bed. She checked on Ethan, still asleep, curled around his rabbit, then walked to the window. The garden stretched out below her like something from a painting, perfectly trimmed hedges, stone pathways winding through flower beds, a fountain in the center with water that caught the moonlight. Beyond that, dark trees pressed close, forming a wall between this estate and the rest of the world. A prison made of luxury. Arya pressed her forehead against the cool glass. She'd made a deal with a man she didn't know. A man who could make people disappear. A man who lived in a house that looked like a fortress and spoke like someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. What the hell had she done? A knock at the door nearly stopped her heart. She spun around. "Who is it?" "It's Elena." Arya didn't know anyone named Elena. She crossed the room and opened the door a crack. A woman stood in the hallway. Late 50s, maybe. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Kind eyes. She wore a simple dress and cardigan, and she was holding a tray with tea and toast. "I thought you might be awake," the woman said. Her voice was soft, accented, Italian, Arya thought. "I'm Elena. I manage the house." Arya stared at the tray. "I didn't ask for anything." "I know, but you should eat. And if you can't sleep, tea helps." Arya hesitated. Then she opened the door wider. Elena stepped inside and set the tray on the small table by the window. She poured tea into a delicate china cup and handed it to Arya. Chamomile. It's what I give Lucian when he can't sleep. Arya took the cup. The warmth felt good against her cold hands. Does he not sleep often? Elena's smile was sad. Not for many years. Arya sipped the tea. It tasted like flowers and honey. She wanted to hate it, wanted to hate everything about this place, but it was the best thing she'd tasted in months. How long have you worked for him? Arya asked. 22 years. And you just, what? Cook and clean for a man who makes people disappear? Elena's expression didn't change. I cook and clean for a man who saved my life when no one else would. The words hit harder than Arya expected. She sat down in the chair by the window. What happened? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, My husband used to beat me. For 15 years. I tried to leave many times, but he always found me. Always dragged me back. The police didn't help. My family didn't help. I was, trapped. Arya's chest tightened. Then one night my husband went too far. He broke 3 of my ribs and my arm. I thought I was going to die. But a neighbor called someone, not the police, someone else, and Lucian came. What did he do? Elena met Arya's eyes. He made my husband disappear, and then he gave me a job, a room, and a life where I never had to be afraid again. Arya set the teacup down. Her hands were shaking. How many people has he done that for? I don't know. He doesn't talk about it. But I've seen others come through here over the years. Women, children, families, people with nowhere else to go. Elena's voice softened. Lucian is not a good man, Arya, but he is not an evil one either. Then what is he? Elena smiled sadly. Complicated. Morning came too fast. Arya woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Ethan standing beside the bed, staring at her. She sat up quickly, heart racing. What's wrong? Ethan didn't answer. He just pointed toward the door. Arya followed his gaze and saw a note that had been slipped under it. She got up, grabbed the paper, and unfolded it. Lucian's handwriting, neat, precise. Breakfast is at 8. Join me if you'd like. If not, Elena will bring food to your room. Arya checked the clock. 7:45. She looked at Ethan. You want to go downstairs? Ethan nodded. Arya wasn't sure if that was a good sign or not, but she changed into clean clothes from the duffel bag, helped Ethan into a fresh shirt, and led him downstairs. The dining room was smaller than the one they'd passed last night, still massive by normal standards, but less formal. Windows overlooked the gardens. The table was set for 3. Lucian sat at the head reading a newspaper with a cup of black coffee at his elbow. He looked up when they entered. Good morning. Arya nodded. She pulled out a chair for Ethan, then sat beside him. You didn't have to do all this. Elena did it. I just drink the coffee. Right on cue, Elena appeared with plates of scrambled eggs, toast, bacon, and fresh fruit. She set them down gently and smiled at Ethan. You like pancakes, sweetheart? Ethan's eyes went wide. He nodded. Elena's smile brightened. I'll make you some. She disappeared back into the kitchen. Arya watched Ethan pick up a piece of bacon and bite into it carefully. He chewed slowly, eyes locked on the plate like he was afraid it would vanish. When's the last time he ate a real meal? Lucian asked quietly. Arya's jaw tightened. We eat. That's not what I asked. 2 days ago, maybe 3. I was working doubles at the diner. We had ramen and cereal. Lucian set the newspaper down. You don't have to work anymore. I'm not taking your money. Why not? Because I don't know what you'll want in return. The words came out harsher than she meant them. Lucian's expression didn't change. He just looked at her with those cold gray eyes and said, I don't want anything from you, Arya. Everyone wants something. Not everyone. Especially men like you. That got a reaction. Lucian's jaw tightened slightly. What kind of man do you think I am? Arya leaned forward. The kind who has bodyguards and warehouses and enough power to make a cop's brother disappear without consequences. The kind who lives in a house like this while the rest of the city rots. The kind who pulled you out of an alley before you bled to death? Lucian's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was an edge to it now. The kind who gave you a safe place to sleep? The kind who's making sure Derek Wells never touches you again? Arya's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, but he was right, and that made it worse. Ethan was watching them both now, his pancakes forgotten. Lucian saw it too. He exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. I'm not your enemy, Arya, but I'm not asking you to trust me either. I'm just asking you to stay here until it's safe to leave. And when will that be? I don't know yet. So I'm a prisoner. You're a guest. Guests can leave whenever they want. Lucian's gaze didn't waver. Can they? The question hung in the air. Arya realized with cold clarity that she'd walked into a cage made of marble and safety, and the door had locked behind her the moment she stepped inside. She pushed her chair back. Come on, Ethan. Ethan looked at her, then at his pancakes, then back at her. His face crumpled. Arya's heart broke. She sat back down. Ethan picked up his fork and started eating again. Lucian watched them both. You can hate me if you need to, but don't punish him for my mistakes. Arya didn't answer. She just sat there, trapped between fury and exhaustion, while Ethan ate his first real meal in days. The days bled together. Arya and Ethan stayed in their room most of the time. Elena brought food. Lucian kept his distance. The house remained quiet. Too quiet. On the third day, Arya couldn't take it anymore. She left Ethan coloring in his room and went exploring. The house was even bigger than she'd realized. Hallways branched off in every direction. Rooms filled with furniture covered in white sheets. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A gym. A pool. A home theater. It felt less like a house and more like a museum. Or a mausoleum. Arya found herself in a wing she hadn't seen before. The hallway was darker here. Colder. She passed door after door, all closed, until she reached one at the very end. It was open just a crack. She should have walked away. She didn't. She pushed the door open. The room inside was frozen in time. A child's bedroom. Blue walls covered in hand-painted stars. A race car bed. Shelves filled with toys and books. Everything perfectly arranged, everything gathering dust. Arya stepped inside. Her chest tightened. This wasn't a guest room. This was a shrine. She walked to the dresser and saw framed photographs. A little boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with dark hair and gray eyes like Lucian's. In one photo, he was laughing. In another, he was holding a toy truck. In the last one, he was standing between Lucian and a beautiful woman with dark hair, all three of them smiling. A family. You shouldn't be in here. Arya spun around. Lucian stood in the doorway. His face was expressionless, but his hands were shaking. Arya's heart hammered. I'm sorry, I didn't know Get out. She moved toward the door. Lucian stepped aside to let her pass. But before she left, Arya stopped and looked back at the photograph. What was his name? Silence. Then, so quietly, she almost didn't hear it. Marco. What happened to him? Lucian's jaw tightened. Car accident. 7 years ago. He was 5. My wife was driving. They both died on impact. The words were flat, emotionless, but his hands were still shaking. Arya felt something crack open in her chest. Lucian, get out. This time, it wasn't a request. Arya left. She walked back to her room on shaking legs and closed the door behind her. Ethan looked up from his coloring book. He tilted his head. Arya sat down on the floor beside him and pulled him into her lap. She held him tight and tried not to cry, because she finally understood. Lucian Moretti wasn't helping her out of kindness. He was helping her because he knew what it felt like to be too late. That night, Arya couldn't sleep again. She left Ethan in bed and went downstairs. The house was dark, silent. She wandered through the halls until she saw light coming from beneath a door. She pushed it open and found a study lined with bookshelves. A massive desk sat in the center. Behind it, Lucian sat with a glass of whiskey in one hand and a photograph in the other. The same photograph from Marco's room. He looked up when she entered. I'm sorry, Arya said. About your son. About your wife. Don't. I just wanted to, I don't need your pity. Lucian set the photograph down. I don't need anything from you, Arya. I already told you that. Then why did you bring us here? Lucian stared at her. Because I could. That's bullshit, and you know it. Is it? Yes. Arya stepped closer. You didn't save me because you had the power to. You saved me because you couldn't save them. The words landed like a slap. Lucian's grip tightened on the glass. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Arya's voice shook. You built this whole life, this house, this power, this empire, and none of it could save the people you loved. So now you save strangers instead. Because maybe if you save enough of us, it'll stop hurting. Get out. Does it work? Get out. Does it make you feel better? Does it bring them back? Lucian stood so fast his chair slammed backward. You think you understand me because we both lost someone? You think that gives you the right to... I think you're drowning, Arya said quietly, just like I am. And I think you hate yourself a little bit every time you save someone because it reminds you that you weren't there when it mattered most. Lucian's face went white. Then he threw the glass. It shattered against the wall beside Arya's head. Whiskey splattered across the books. Glass rained onto the floor. Arya didn't flinch. She just stood there, staring at him. Lucian's chest heaved. His hands were shaking again. Get out of my house. No! I said, I heard you, and I'm not leaving, because you're right. I don't have anywhere else to go. And neither does Ethan. So we're stuck here, with you, in this beautiful fucking prison you built to keep the ghosts out. Lucian stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Lucian sank back into his chair and buried his face in his hands. Arya watched his shoulders shake. She should have left. Instead, she crossed the room and sat down in the chair across from him. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I shouldn't have said those things. Lucian didn't look up. You were right. That doesn't make it okay. Doesn't make it wrong either. Silence settled between them. Arya looked at the shattered glass, the spilled whiskey, the photograph still sitting on the desk. I dream about the accident, she said, the one that killed my sister. I wasn't there, I was at work. But I dream about it anyway. I see the car hitting the guardrail. I see Maggie's face. I see Ethan in the back seat screaming, and every time I'm running toward them, but I never get there in time. Lucian lifted his head. His eyes were red. I was supposed to drive them that night, Arya continued. Maggie asked me to take Ethan to his doctor's appointment because her car was in the shop, but I picked up an extra shift instead. I told her to take the bus, and 3 hours later the bus driver had a heart attack and crashed into a bridge support. Her voice cracked. Ethan was the only survivor, and he hasn't spoken a single word since. Lucian stared at her. Then he said, very quietly, It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? No. Then why does it feel like it was? Lucian didn't answer, because he didn't have one. Arya wiped her eyes. I don't know how to save him, Lucian. I don't know how to make him talk again. I don't know how to fix what's broken inside him, and I'm terrified that I'm going to fail him the same way I failed Maggie. You haven't failed anyone. How do you know? Because you're still here. You're still trying. That's more than most people do. Arya laughed bitterly. Is that what you tell yourself? Lucian's jaw tightened. Every single day. They sat in silence. Outside, rain started to fall. Finally, Lucian stood. He walked to the window and stared out at the dark gardens. I was at a meeting when they died, a business deal that couldn't wait. My wife called me 3 times. I didn't answer. I was too busy making money, building power, becoming someone important. His voice was hollow. She left a voicemail, said Marco wanted to say goodnight. I didn't listen to it until after the police called. Arya's throat tightened. I still have that voicemail, Lucian continued. I listen to it sometimes, just to hear his voice. He says, Hi, Daddy. Mommy says you're working late again. I drew you a picture. I love you. And then the message ends. He turned to face her. So yes, Arya, you're right. I save strangers because I couldn't save them. And no, it doesn't make it hurt less. But at least when I close my eyes at night, I know I tried. I know I didn't just keep driving. Arya stood. She crossed the room, and she wrapped her arms around Lucian Moretti. He went rigid. Then his arms came up slowly, hesitantly, and he held her back. They stood like that for a long time, 2 broken people clinging to each other in the dark. Something shifted after that night. Lucian stopped avoiding them. He started joining them for breakfast. He asked Ethan about his drawings. He taught the boy how to play chess, silently, patiently, moving the pieces across the board while Ethan watched with bright, curious eyes. And Ethan responded. Not with words, but with trust. He started following Lucian around the house, started sitting beside him during meals, started falling asleep on the couch in the study while Lucian worked. Arya watched it happen with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Then the phone call came. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Arya and Ethan were in the garden. Ethan was drawing flowers while Arya sat in the sun, when Elena came running outside. "Arya, Lucian needs you, now!" The tone in her voice made Arya's blood run cold. She grabbed Ethan's hand and ran inside. Lucian was in his study, phone pressed to his ear, face white. "I understand," he said. "Keep me updated." He hung up, looked at Arya. "They found Derek." Arya's heart stopped. "What?" "His body washed up in the Chicago River this morning. Gunshot wound to the head. Police are calling it a gang execution." Relief and horror flooded through her in equal measure. Did you? "No." Lucian's voice was hard. "I told my people to scare him, not kill him." "Then who?" "His own family." Lucian's jaw tightened. Someone wanted him silenced, permanently. Arya sank into a chair. "Ryan? Maybe. Or someone higher up. Either way, Derek's death just made things worse." "How?" Lucian looked at her. "Because now they'll be looking for whoever ordered the hit, and every trail they follow leads back to me." The room spun. Arya gripped the armrests. "What does that mean?" "It means we're out of time." Lucian walked to his desk and pulled out a folder. "I have 3 plans. All of them involve leaving the country." "What? No, I can't." "Arya." Lucian's voice was gentle but firm. "They're going to come for me. When they do, anyone connected to me becomes a target. That includes you and Ethan. Then I'll leave. I'll take Ethan and we'll disappear. They'll find you. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Lucian set the folder down. "But if you come with me, I can protect you. I have houses overseas, resources, people who owe me favors. We can start over somewhere safe." Arya stared at him. "Start over. With Lucian. In another country. Another life." "You're asking me to run away with you," she said slowly. "I'm asking you to survive." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." "And what happens to your empire, your power, everything you built?" Lucian's expression was unreadable. "I burn it down and walk away." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Arya stood, her legs shook. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of losing people I care about." The words hung between them. Arya's pulse hammered in her ears. "Lucian!" The window exploded. Glass shattered inward. Something metal hit the floor. Lucian's eyes went wide. "Get down!" He grabbed Arya and pulled her behind the desk. The room erupted in smoke. Ethan screamed. Alarms blared. Gunfire tore through the gardens outside. And Arya realized with cold, terrible clarity that the war had finally found them. The smoke grenade hissed like a dying animal. Arya couldn't see anything, couldn't breathe. Her eyes burned. Her lungs screamed for air. Lucian's hand was locked around her wrist, dragging her across the floor through broken glass and overturned furniture. She could hear Ethan crying somewhere close, high and terrified, and so unlike the silence she'd grown used to that it nearly broke her apart. "Ethan!" she screamed. "I have him!" Elena's voice cut through the chaos. "I have him!" Gunfire erupted outside. Not pistols, automatic weapons. The sound tore through the walls like thunder. Lucian shoved Arya toward a panel in the wall she'd never noticed before. He pressed something, and it swung open. A hidden passage. "Go!" he shouted. Arya stumbled into the dark. Elena appeared behind her with Ethan clutched to her chest. The boy's face was buried in her shoulder. His rabbit dangled from one hand. He was shaking so hard Arya could see it even through the smoke. Lucian pulled the panel shut behind them. Everything went black. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "Don't move." Arya pressed her back against the cold wall. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would crack her ribs. She could hear footsteps above them, heavy boots, multiple men. They were inside the house now. A voice shouted something in a language she didn't understand. Another voice answered, then more gunfire. Closer this time. Inside the study they'd just left. Glass shattered, furniture splintered. Someone was destroying everything. Ethan whimpered. Elena clamped a hand over his mouth. Arya wanted to scream, wanted to grab her nephew and run as far from this place as her legs could carry her. But Lucian's hand found hers in the dark and squeezed once, hard, and somehow that was enough to keep her still. The footsteps moved overhead, searching, hunting. Then they faded. Minutes passed, or hours. Arya couldn't tell anymore. Finally, Lucian's phone buzzed. He pulled it out. The screen's glow painted his face in harsh blue light and read something. His jaw tightened. "We need to move," he said quietly. "Now." He pushed open another panel at the far end of the passage. They emerged into a garage Arya had never seen. 3 black SUVs sat waiting. Men in tactical gear moved between them, loading weapons, checking equipment, speaking in low, urgent voices. One of them saw Lucian and nodded. "Sir, the perimeter's compromised. We counted at least 12 hostiles. They breached the east gate and came in hard. We took down 4, but the rest scattered into the woods." "How long until police arrive?" "Already here. 3 units at the main gate. But they're not coming in." Lucian's expression went cold. "They're watching." "Yes, sir." "Paid off?" "Most likely." Arya felt her stomach drop. "The police are working with whoever attacked us." Lucian didn't look at her. "Get in the car. Middle one." "Lucian. Now, Arya." His voice left no room for argument. Elena carried Ethan to the SUV and climbed in. Arya followed. Lucian slid in beside her. The door slammed shut. The driver, same professional silence as before, started the engine. "Where are we going?" Arya asked. "Somewhere safe." "That's what you said about here." Lucian turned to look at her. His gray eyes were hard, empty. "I was wrong." The SUV rolled forward. The garage door opened. They pulled out into chaos. The gardens were destroyed. Flower beds torn apart by bullets. Fountains shattered. Bodies lay scattered across the lawn, some in tactical gear, some in suits. Arya couldn't tell who was who, couldn't tell who'd won. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from vomiting. Ethan was crying again. Soft, desperate sounds that tore at Arya's chest. She reached across Elena and took his hand. "It's okay, baby. We're okay. An explosion lit up the night behind them. Arya spun around and saw flames erupting from the second floor of Lucian's house, the room with the blue walls and hand-painted stars. Marco's room. Lucian stared at the fire. His face was stone, but his hands were shaking again. The SUV accelerated. They hit the main road doing 70. Police cars sat at the gates with their lights flashing, but they didn't move, didn't follow. Just watched as Lucian Moretti fled from the ruins of his empire. They drove for 2 hours. North, then west, then north again, changing highways, doubling back, making sure no one followed. Ethan finally stopped crying somewhere around the Wisconsin border. He fell asleep against Elena's shoulder, exhausted and silent again. Arya watched the dark trees blur past the window and tried to process what had just happened. Someone had attacked Lucian's house, someone with military-grade weapons and police protection, someone who wanted him dead. "Who were they?" she asked quietly. Lucian didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "Rivals, or federal agents, or both. It doesn't matter anymore." "How can it not matter?" "Because whoever sent them just declared war, and wars don't end until someone's dead." Arya's throat tightened. "So what do we do?" "We disappear." "For how long?" "Forever." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Arya looked at Ethan, at his small, sleeping face, at the rabbit clutched in his fist. She thought about his school, not that he'd been attending anyway, his doctors, his therapists, the life she'd been trying so hard to build for him in Chicago. All of it gone now, burned away in the smoke and gunfire. "I can't run forever," she whispered. "You can if you want to survive." "That's not living." Lucian turned to look at her. "No, but it's better than dying." They stopped at a private airfield just before dawn. The sky was turning gray. Birds were starting to sing. Everything looked peaceful and normal, and completely wrong. Lucian's phone had been ringing non-stop for the last hour. He'd ignored most of the calls, answered a few with single-word responses. His face got harder with each conversation. When they pulled up to the hangar, he finally hung up and turned to face everyone in the car. "Here's what's happening," he said. His voice was flat, professional, the voice of a man giving orders he knew would be followed. "There's a plane waiting. It'll take us to Portugal. I have a house there, remote, off the grid. No one knows about it except 3 people I trust with my life." "Portugal?" Arya's voice cracked. "I don't even have a passport." "You will in 6 hours." "How? I have people who handle these things." Lucian's gaze shifted to Elena. "You'll come with us, at least until things settle." Elena nodded. She looked older suddenly, tired. "What about the house?" "Let it burn." "Lucian, it's done, Elena. All of it. The business, the contacts, the empire. I'm walking away." Silence filled the car. Then Elena reached across Ethan and squeezed Lucian's hand. "Your father would be proud." Lucian's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. The driver opened the door. They climbed out into the cold morning air. The hangar doors were open. Inside, a small jet sat waiting, sleek and white with dark windows. 2 pilots stood near the stairs checking clipboards. Arya lifted Ethan into her arms. He was still half asleep, head resting on her shoulder. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, fast, scared, just like hers. Lucian was halfway to the plane when his phone rang again. He stopped, looked at the screen. His face went white. "What?" Arya asked. "Who is it?" Lucian answered the call. "Talk." He listened. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes died. He lowered the phone slowly, looked at Arya. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Ryan Wells just held a press conference. He's claiming I kidnapped you and Ethan, that I murdered his brother and took you as collateral to keep you quiet." Arya's stomach dropped. "That's insane. He knows that's not—" "There's video, Arya. Security footage from the alley. Doctored to make it look like my men grabbed you against your will. Witness statements from your neighbors saying they saw you being forced into a car. Derek's phone records showing threatening texts from a burner number registered to one of my shell companies. But none of that's real." "No, but it looks real. And that's all that matters." Lucian's voice was hollow. "There's a warrant out for my arrest. Federal charges, kidnapping, murder, racketeering. They've frozen my accounts, seized my properties, put my face on every news channel in the country." Arya's knees went weak. "They can't. You didn't—" "I know." Lucian looked at the plane, at the pilots, at Elena standing with Ethan in her arms. "But they don't care about the truth. They care about taking me down, and they're using you to do it." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Arya set Ethan down carefully. Her hands were shaking. "So what do we do?" "You turn yourself in." "What?" "You and Ethan. Go to the police. Tell them I forced you to come with me. Tell them Derek was abusive and I used that to manipulate you. Tell them whatever they want to hear." Arya stared at him. "You want me to lie?" "I want you to survive." "By throwing you under the bus?" "By saving yourself and your nephew before this destroys you both." "No." Arya stepped closer. "No, I'm not doing that." "Arya, you saved my life, Lucian. You kept us safe. You gave Ethan a place where he could heal, and now you want me to repay that by telling the world you're a monster? I am a monster." "Bullshit!" Lucian's expression hardened. "You don't know what I've done. The people I've hurt. The lives I've destroyed building this empire. I don't care. You should." "Well, I don't." Arya's voice rose. "Because none of that matters compared to what you did for us. You could have kept driving that night in the alley. You could have let Derek kill me. But you didn't. You stopped. You helped. And I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen just because some corrupt cop wants revenge." Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, very softly, "They'll come for you, Arya. If you stay with me, they'll destroy you. They'll take Ethan. They'll put you in prison as an accomplice, and there won't be anything I can do to stop it. Then we run. We can't run forever. We can try. It's not enough. It's all we have." The words echoed across the empty airfield. Lucian looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time since the attack, some of the hardness left his eyes. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why are you willing to risk everything for me?" Arya's throat tightened. She thought about the last few weeks, about breakfast in the sunlit dining room, about Lucian teaching Ethan to play chess, about late-night conversations in the study where they'd shared their grief like broken pieces of the same shattered mirror. She thought about the way he looked at Ethan, like he was seeing his own son again, the way he looked at her, like she was worth saving. "Because you stopped driving," she whispered. Lucian's expression cracked, just for a second, then he turned away. "Get on the plane." "What about you?" "I have something to take care of first." "Lucian, get on the plane." His voice left no room for argument. Arya wanted to fight, wanted to demand answers, but Elena was already carrying Ethan up the stairs. The pilots were preparing for takeoff, and Lucian was walking back toward the SUV with his phone pressed to his ear. Arya climbed the stairs. At the top, she turned back. Lucian was standing beside the car, watching her. Even from this distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand was clenched into a fist. He looked like a man preparing for war, or a funeral. The plane door closed. Arya sank into a leather seat. Elena sat across from her with Ethan buckled in between them. The boy's eyes were open now, wide and scared and locked on Arya's face. "Where's Lucian?" Elena asked quietly. "I don't know." The engine started. The plane began to taxi. Arya pressed her face to the window and watched the hangar shrink behind them. The SUV was still there, but Lucian was gone. They landed in Portugal 14 hours later. Arya hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, had barely spoken. She'd spent the entire flight staring at the clouds and trying to figure out what the hell happened to her life. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress. Now she was a fugitive. A car was waiting at the airport. Another black SUV with another silent driver. They drove through winding mountain roads for 2 hours until they reached a house perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was smaller than Lucian's estate in Chicago. Simpler. White stone walls, blue shutters, lemon trees growing in the courtyard. The sound of waves crashing against rocks far below. It looked like something from a postcard, or a grave. Elena helped Ethan out of the car. The boy stood in the courtyard, staring at the ocean with those big, quiet eyes. A breeze ruffled his hair. For a moment, he almost looked peaceful. Arya wanted to feel relief. All she felt was hollow. A woman emerged from the house. Older. Gray hair, kind face. She spoke to Elena in rapid Portuguese. Elena answered. They embraced. The woman turned to Arya and smiled. "Welcome, I'm Sophia. This house is yours for as long as you need it." Arya nodded. She couldn't find words. Sophia led them inside. The house was beautiful. White walls, wooden beams, simple furniture, everything clean and bright and safe. But Lucian wasn't there. "Where is he?" Arya asked Elena. Elena's expression was sad. "I don't know." "Did he call?" "No." "Text?" "No." Arya's chest tightened. "So he just, what? Put us on a plane and disappeared?" "He's protecting you." "By abandoning us?" "By keeping you alive." Arya wanted to scream. Instead, she walked outside and stood at the edge of the cliff. The ocean stretched endlessly below, blue and cold and indifferent. She could hear Ethan somewhere behind her talking quietly with Elena. Actually talking. Forming words. He was healing, and all Arya could think about was the man who'd made that possible. The man who'd saved them. The man who'd walked away. She pulled out her phone. No service. No Wi-Fi. Nothing. She was completely cut off. Trapped in paradise. 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. No word from Lucian. Arya tried to settle in, tried to let Ethan explore the house and the gardens, tried to pretend this was a vacation instead of exile. But every night she dreamed about the fire, about Lucian's face as he watched his son's room burn, about the look in his eyes when he told her to get on the plane. On the 8th day, Elena found her sitting on the cliff edge at sunset. "You should eat something," Elena said gently. "I'm not hungry." "Arya's... Has he called?" Elena was quiet. "Has he?" Arya's voice cracked. "No." Arya closed her eyes. "He's not coming, is he?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Arya turned to look at her. "You've known him for 22 years. You know how he thinks. You know what he's doing right now." Elena sat down beside her. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then she said, "Lucian believes he destroys everything he loves. His wife, his son, and now you. He thinks the best way to protect you is to stay as far away as possible." That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Maybe, but it's what he believes. So what am I supposed to do? Just sit here and wait for him to change his mind? You're supposed to live, Arya. You're supposed to take care of Ethan. You're supposed to heal. That's what Lucian wants for you. What about what I want? Elena smiled sadly. What do you want? Arya looked out at the ocean. She thought about Lucian's hands shaking as he held the photograph of his son, about the way his voice had softened when he said Marco's name, about the moment in the study when he'd held her and she'd felt, for the first time in years, like she wasn't alone in her grief. "Want him here," she whispered. "Then you'll have to go get him." Arya's head snapped around. "What?" Elena stood. "Lucian won't come to you. He's too afraid, too broken, too convinced he'll ruin you if he gets too close." She looked down at Arya with knowing eyes. "But if you go to him, if you show him you're not afraid, he might believe you." "I don't even know where he is." "Chicago." Arya's blood ran cold. "He went back 3 days ago. Sophia got a message from one of his old contacts. Lucian surrendered himself to the FBI. The world tilted. Arya stood so fast she nearly fell off the cliff. He what? He made a deal. Testimony against corrupt officials in exchange for immunity for anyone associated with him, including you. Why would he? Because he loves you, Arya, and he'd rather destroy himself than watch you pay for his mistakes. Arya's knees gave out. She sank back down onto the grass. Lucian had turned himself in. Lucian was in federal custody. Lucian was gone, and he'd done it to save her. "How long?" she asked hoarsely. "How long what? How long before they lock him up forever?" Elena's expression was grim. "The arraignment is in 2 days. After that, 20 years. Minimum. Maybe more." 20 years. Arya pressed her hands to her face. She'd lost her sister. She'd lost her home. She'd lost everything. And now she was losing the one person who'd made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could survive it all. "I have to go back," she said. "Arya, no. If you go back, they'll arrest you too. The deal only works if you stay hidden." "I don't care." "You should. Ethan needs you. Ethan needs both of us." The words came out sharper than she meant them. Elena flinched. Arya stood again. Her whole body was shaking. "Lucian gave Ethan his voice back. He made him feel safe. He made us both feel—" Her throat closed. "I can't just let him rot in prison for the rest of his life because he was stupid enough to care about us." "What can you do? You're not a lawyer. You're not a federal agent. You're a waitress from Chicago with no money and no power, and I'm the only person who knows the truth." Arya's voice rose. "I'm the only witness who can prove Derek attacked me first, that Lucian saved my life, that everything Ryan Wells said was a lie. They won't believe you. Maybe not, but I have to try." Elena stared at her. Then she said quietly, "If you do this, you'll lose everything. Your freedom, your future, your chance to give Ethan a normal life. If I don't do this, I lose the only man who ever stopped long enough to see I was worth saving." Silence. The ocean crashed below. Finally, Elena nodded. "Then we leave tonight." They flew back to Chicago on forged documents. Sophia stayed behind with Ethan. The boy had cried when Arya left, actually cried real tears and begged her not to go in broken, sobbing words that nearly destroyed her. But she'd kissed his forehead and promised she'd come back. She just didn't know if it was a promise she could keep. The flight took 18 hours. Arya didn't sleep. She sat in the cramped economy seat and stared at her reflection in the dark window and wondered what the hell she thought she was doing. She had no plan, no lawyers, no evidence except her own testimony. All she had was the truth, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. They landed at O'Hare at 6 in the morning. The airport was crowded. Travelers rushing past with coffee cups and rolling suitcases. Everything normal, everything wrong. Arya's face was on the news. She saw it on a TV screen near baggage claim. Her photo, the one from her driver's license, next to Lucian's. The headline read, "Kidnapping Victim Still Missing. Mobster Moretti in Custody." Victim. The word made her want to vomit. Elena grabbed her arm. "We need to go. Now." They made it to the rental car without being recognized. Elena drove. Arya sat in the passenger seat with her hands shaking and her pulse hammering, and a plan forming in the back of her mind that was either brilliant or insane. She pulled out the burner phone Elena had given her and dialed the one number she'd memorized. It rang twice. Then a voice answered. "Chicago Tribune. How can I direct your call?" Arya took a breath. "I need to speak to a reporter. I have a story about Lucian Moretti." "Ma'am, we've already covered." "I'm Arya Bennett, the woman he supposedly kidnapped." Silence on the other end. Then, "Hold, please." 30 seconds later, a new voice came on. Male. Urgent. "This is Marcus Chen. Is this really Arya Bennett?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" "I know things only she would know. Derek Wells had a scar on his left shoulder from a bar fight in 2019. Ryan Wells drives a gray Dodge Charger with a dent in the back bumper. Lucian Moretti's son was named Marco, and he died 7 years ago in a car accident on the interstate." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe. For now." "The police are looking for you. The FBI has a warrant." "I know. That's why I'm calling you first." Arya's voice steadied. "Lucian Moretti didn't kidnap me. He saved my life, and I can prove it. But I need your help." "What kind of help?" "I need you to tell my story, the real one, before they bury it forever." Marcus Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Where do you want to meet?" The article went live 6 hours later. Kidnapping victim speaks. Moretti saved my life. Arya's interview. Her testimony. Photos of her injuries from the night Derek attacked her. Medical records. Text messages Derek had sent threatening to kill her. Witness statements from her neighbors confirming Derek's abuse. Everything. The truth. It exploded across the internet in minutes. By evening, every major news network was running the story. By midnight, Ryan Wells was under investigation for falsifying evidence. By dawn, the FBI had dropped half the charges against Lucian. But it wasn't enough. He was still facing 20 years, still locked in a federal holding cell, still convinced he'd destroyed her life. Arya stood outside the courthouse at 6 a.m, waiting for his arraignment. Elena stood beside her. A crowd had gathered, reporters, protesters, curious onlookers. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. Arya ignored all of it. She'd just watched the courthouse doors. At 8 o'clock, they brought Lucian out. He was in handcuffs, orange jumpsuit, unshaven, exhausted, broken, but alive. His eyes scanned the crowd, found hers. He stopped walking. The federal marshals pulled him forward, but Lucian resisted, his gaze locked on Arya's face. She saw the moment he understood, the moment he realized she'd come back, the moment he knew she wasn't running anymore. His expression cracked. And for the first time since she'd met him, Lucian Moretti looked terrified. Not of the charges, not of the prison time, of her, of what it meant that she'd risked everything to stand here. Arya stepped forward. The marshals moved to block her. "Wait," she said. Her voice cut through the chaos. "I need to speak to him." "Ma'am, you can't. I'm Arya Bennett. I'm the victim in this case, and I have the right to address the defendant." The marshals looked at each other. Then they stepped aside. Arya walked forward until she was standing 3 feet from Lucian. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of everything he'd lost, the fear that he'd dragged her down with him. "You're an idiot," she said quietly. Lucian's jaw tightened. "Arya, you don't get to make decisions for me. You don't get to sacrifice yourself and pretend it's noble. And you sure as hell don't get to walk away without giving me a choice. I was trying to protect you." "By leaving me behind?" "Yes." "That's not protection, Lucian. That's cowardice." The word landed like a slap. Lucian flinched. Arya stepped closer. "I came back because you matter, because Ethan needs you, because I—" Her voice broke. She took a breath. Tried again. "Because I can't do this without you." Lucian stared at her. His eyes were wet. "You deserve better than me," he whispered. "I deserve the truth. And the truth is that you're the first person in my entire life who stopped long enough to see I was drowning. So no, I'm not walking away. I'm not letting you rot in prison. And I'm not pretending you're a monster when we both know you're just a man who lost everything and spent 30 years trying to save everyone else from the same fate. Silence. The crowd had gone quiet. Even the reporters had stopped shouting. Lucian's hands trembled in the cuffs. "I don't know how to be what you need," he said. "Neither do I. But we can figure it out, together." "They'll never let me go, Arya. Even with your testimony. I've done too much. Hurt too many people. The past doesn't just disappear because you want it to. Then we build a new future." "How?" Arya reached out and took his cuffed hands in hers. "By stopping," she said softly. "By choosing something different. By being brave enough to walk away from the violence and try something harder." "What's harder than this?" "Living." The word hung between them. Lucian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had shifted. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. I'll try." Arya's throat tightened. She squeezed his hands. Then the marshals stepped forward. "Time's up." They pulled Lucian away. But before they led him into the courthouse, he turned back one last time. And he smiled. Small, broken, real. Arya watched him disappear through the doors. Then she turned to Elena. "What happens now?" Elena's expression was grim. "Now we wait, and hope the truth is enough." But it wasn't. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Prosecutors brought forward 30 years of evidence. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, assault, witness intimidation, everything Lucian had ever done to build his empire. Arya testified. So did Elena. So did 3 other women Lucian had helped escape abusive situations over the years. So did a federal agent who admitted, on the stand, that Ryan Wells had fabricated evidence and paid off witnesses. Ryan Wells was arrested. Derek's family lost everything. But Lucian still faced 15 years. The judge was sympathetic, but the law was the law. On the final day of the trial, Lucian stood to hear his sentence. The courtroom was packed. Arya sat in the front row, hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. The judge looked at Lucian. "Mr. Moretti, you've committed serious crimes, crimes that have caused real harm to real people. The prosecution is asking for 20 years. Your defense is asking for 5 with time served." Lucian nodded. "I understand, Your Honor. However," the judge paused, "I've also heard testimony from multiple witnesses about the good you've done, the lives you've saved, the people you've protected. And while that doesn't erase your crimes, it does speak to your capacity for change." Arya's heart hammered. "I'm sentencing you to 10 years in federal prison, but I'm suspending 8 of those years on the condition that you cooperate fully with federal investigators, testify against corrupt officials in your organization, and commit no further crimes." The courtroom erupted. Arya's vision blurred. 2 years. Lucian would serve 2 years. And then he'd be free. The marshals led him away. But before he disappeared through the door, Lucian turned and found Arya in the crowd. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Arya pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing. Elena grabbed her shoulder. "He's alive, Arya! He's coming home!" 2 years, 730 days. It felt like forever, and no time at all. Arya flew back to Portugal that night. Ethan was waiting at the house on the cliff, sitting in the courtyard with Sophia, drawing pictures of the ocean. When he saw Arya, he dropped his crayons and ran. She caught him and held him tight. "Is Lucian okay?" Ethan asked. His voice was small but clear. Arya's throat closed. He'd spoken, a full sentence. She pulled back and cupped his face. "He's okay, baby. He's safe. And he's coming home." "When?" 2 years. Ethan's face fell. "That's a long time." "I know, but we'll wait for him. Together. And when he gets out, we'll be a family. A real one." Ethan nodded. Then he pressed his face into her shoulder and whispered, "I miss him." Arya closed her eyes. "Me too, baby. Me too." 2 years felt like drowning in slow motion. Arya marked the days on a calendar she kept hidden in her nightstand. 730 small X's that she crossed off every morning before Ethan woke up, each one a promise. Each one a reminder that Lucian was still alive somewhere in a federal prison in Illinois, counting down the same days she was. The house on the cliff became their refuge. Ethan healed there. His voice came back gradually, first in whispers, then in full sentences, then in laughter that echoed through the courtyard and made Sophia cry with joy. He learned Portuguese from Sophia, learned to paint from Elena, learned to swim in the cove below the house where the water was so blue it looked fake. He asked about Lucian every single day. When's he coming home? Soon, baby. How soon? 612 days. That's still forever. I know. But Ethan never stopped asking, and Arya never stopped answering. She wrote letters to Lucian every week, long rambling letters about Ethan's progress, about the lemon trees blooming in spring, about the way the sunset looked from the cliff. She told him things she'd never said out loud, about how she dreamed about him, about how she woke up some mornings and forgot for a moment that he wasn't there, about how much it hurt to love someone she couldn't touch. He wrote back, not often, maybe once a month. Short letters on prison stationery with careful handwriting that looked nothing like the confident script from his note that first morning. Arya, I'm glad Ethan is speaking again. I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you're healing. I don't deserve the life you're building for me on the outside, but I'll try to be worthy of it when I get there. L. Every letter was the same, distant, controlled, like he was afraid to say too much, like he was afraid to hope. Arya kept them all in a wooden box under her bed. 18 months in, everything changed. Arya was in the courtyard with Ethan when Elena came running outside, phone pressed to her ear, face white. What? Arya asked. What happened? Elena lowered the phone. There was an incident at the prison. Arya's blood turned to ice. What kind of incident? A riot. In Lucian's cell block. 3 inmates were killed, 12 injured. The world tilted. Arya grabbed Elena's arm. Is he... He's alive, but he's in medical. How bad? Elena's expression was grim. They wouldn't tell me. Arya was on a plane to Chicago 6 hours later. She left Ethan with Sophia and Elena. The boy had cried and begged her not to go, but she'd kissed his forehead and promised she'd bring Lucian home safe. Another promise she didn't know if she could keep. The flight took 16 hours. Arya didn't sleep. She sat in the cramped seat with her hands shaking and her mind racing through every worst-case scenario. Lucian beaten unconscious, Lucian stabbed, Lucian bleeding out on a prison floor while guards stood by and did nothing. She landed at O'Hare at dawn, went straight to the prison. They wouldn't let her see him. Family only, the guard at the desk said. I'm his fiancée. Not according to our records. Then change your records. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down. Arya wanted to scream, wanted to climb over the desk and force her way through the security doors and find Lucian herself. But that would get her arrested, and arrested meant useless. She took a breath, steadied her voice. Please, I flew 16 hours to get here. I just need to know he's okay. The guard's expression softened slightly. He's stable. That's all I can tell you. Can you at least tell him I'm here? I can pass along a message. Arya pulled out one of her letters, the one she'd written on the plane. Give him this. The guard took it. No promises. I'll wait. She sat in the visiting room for 4 hours. Other visitors came and went. Wives, mothers, children, all of them with the same exhausted, desperate look Arya recognized from the mirror. Finally, a different guard appeared. Arya Bennett? She stood. Yes. Come with me. He led her through security checkpoints and locked doors and hallways that smelled like bleach and despair until they reached a small medical wing. He stopped outside a door with a window. 5 minutes, he said. That's all I can give you. Arya nodded. He opened the door. Lucian was sitting on a narrow bed with his back to the wall. He wore a white t-shirt and gray pants, bandages wrapped around his ribs. His left eye was swollen shut. A cut above his eyebrow had been stitched closed, but he was alive. He looked up when she entered, and his expression broke. Arya. Her name came out like a prayer. She crossed the room and grabbed his face in her hands. What the hell happened? It was nothing, just... Don't lie to me. Lucian's jaw tightened. Some of the inmates found out I'd been cooperating with federal prosecutors, testifying against dirty cops and organized crime families. They didn't like it. So they tried to kill you. They tried. Arya's throat closed. She could see bruises around his neck, defensive wounds on his knuckles. He'd fought back. Hard. "How many?" she asked. "6. "And you're still alive." "Barely." Arya sank onto the bed beside him. Her hands were shaking. "You have 6 months left, Lucian. 6 months. You were supposed to keep your head down and stay safe, and I know." "Then why?" "Because they were going to kill someone else." Lucian's voice was quiet. "A kid. 19 years old. In for drug possession. Wrong place, wrong time. They wanted to make an example. I got in the way." "Of course he did. Of course." Arya pressed her hands to her face. "You can't save everyone." "I can try." "Not if you're dead." "I'm not dead." "You could have been." "But I'm not." Lucian reached out and gently pulled her hands away from her face. "I'm right here, and I'm okay." Arya looked at him, at his swollen eye, his bruised ribs, his exhausted face. "You look like hell," she whispered. "You look beautiful." The words hit her like a punch. Arya's vision blurred. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Say things that make me want to kiss you when there's a guard watching through the window." Lucian's mouth curved into something almost like a smile. "Then don't look at the guard." "Lucian!" He leaned forward slowly, wincing at the pain in his ribs, and pressed his forehead against hers. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. "I read your letters," Lucian said quietly. "Every single one." "I know, you write back." "I mean, I really read them, sometimes 3 or 4 times. They're the only thing that keeps me sane in here." Arya's chest tightened. "You never say that in your letters." "I know. Why not?" "Because I'm afraid if I start telling you how I really feel, I won't be able to stop." Arya pulled back just enough to see his face. "Then don't stop." Lucian stared at her. His gray eyes were raw, vulnerable. "I think about you every second of every day," he said. "I think about Ethan, about the house in Portugal, about the life you're building without me, and I'm terrified that by the time I get out, you'll have realized you don't need me anymore." "That's the stupidest thing you've ever said." "Is it?" "Yes." Arya grabbed his hand. "Ethan asks about you every morning. He draws pictures of you. He practices chess moves so he can beat you when you come home. And Her voice cracked. "I haven't stopped waiting, Lucian. Not for a single day." Lucian's expression crumbled. He pulled her into his arms, carefully because of the ribs, and held her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. 6 more months, he whispered into her hair. 183 days. "You've been counting. Every single one." The guard knocked on the window. Time was up. Arya pulled back. She wiped her eyes, tried to steady her breathing. "I'll come back," she said. "Every month, I'll—" "No." She froze. "What?" "Don't come back here, Arya. It's too dangerous. The people I testified against have connections everywhere. If they find out you're visiting me, they'll use you to get to me." "I don't care. I do." "Lucian, please." His voice broke. "Please just stay safe. Stay in Portugal. Take care of Ethan. Let me finish my time knowing you're protected." Arya wanted to argue, but she could see the fear in his eyes. Real fear, not for himself, for her. She nodded slowly. "Okay. Promise me." "I promise." The guard opened the door. "Time's up." Arya stood. Lucian caught her hand. "Arya." She looked back. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple, devastating, true. Arya's throat closed. She squeezed his hand. "I know." Then she left before she broke apart completely. She flew back to Portugal that night. But something had shifted. Lucian's words echoed in her head for weeks. "The people I testified against have connections everywhere." Arya started noticing things. A car that followed her to the market 3 days in a row. A man who watched the house from the cliff path every morning. Phone calls where no one answered when Sophia picked up. She told herself she was being paranoid, but paranoia had kept her alive before. She started keeping Ethan inside more. Started locking doors she used to leave open. Started sleeping with a knife under her pillow. Elena noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked one evening while they were making dinner. "Nothing." Liar. Arya set down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. I think someone's watching the house. Elena's expression darkened. What kind of someone? I don't know. Maybe no one. Maybe I'm just... Glass shattered in the front room. Both women froze. Ethan screamed. Arya ran. She burst into the living room and found Ethan pressed against the wall, staring at a brick that had crashed through the window. Glass covered the floor. A note was wrapped around the brick with rubber bands. Arya grabbed it, unfolded it. 5 words in blocky handwriting. We know where you are. Her blood turned to ice. Elena appeared behind her. She saw the note, saw the brick. Her face went white. We need to call the police. No. Arya, the police won't help. Whoever did this has connections. They'll know we called before the cops even arrive. Then what do we do? Arya looked at Ethan. The boy was shaking. His eyes were wide with the same terror she'd seen the night of the attack in Chicago. She'd promised him safety. She'd promised him peace. And now it was happening again. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd memorized but never used. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Yes? This is Arya Bennett. I need to speak to Lucian Moretti now. He's not available for someone just threw a brick through my window with a death threat. So unless you want to explain to a federal judge why you ignored a credible threat against a witness under protection, you'll put him on the phone. Now. Silence. Then, hold. 2 minutes passed. Then Lucian's voice came through. Arya? What happened? She told him. Everything. The car. The man on the cliff. The brick. When she finished, Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very calmly, Pack a bag. You're leaving Portugal tonight. Where am I supposed to go? There's a safe house in the Azores. No one knows about it except me and one contact I trust with my life. I'll make a call. Someone will pick you up in 2 hours. Lucian, they found you, Arya. I don't know how, but they did. And if you stay there, they'll come back. And next time, it won't be a brick. Arya looked at Ethan, at Elena, at the shattered window. Okay, she whispered. Stay on the line with me until the car arrives. You're in prison. You can't just... I can and I will. Now pack. Arya put the phone on speaker and started throwing clothes into a bag. Elena did the same. Sophia appeared with food and water. Ethan clung to his rabbit and watched everything with terrified eyes. Lucian stayed on the line the entire time, talking quietly, giving instructions, making calls to people Arya couldn't see. Exactly 90 minutes later, headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. A black car, armored, 2 men in suits. They're here, Arya said. Good. Go with them. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even Elena. She's coming with us. No, she needs to stay and make it look like you're still there. Buy you time. Elena's face was grim, but she nodded. Arya grabbed Ethan's hand. We have to go, baby. I'm scared. I know. Me too. But we're going to be okay. She didn't know if it was true, but she said it anyway. They ran to the car. The driver opened the door. Arya shoved Ethan inside and climbed in after him. The door slammed shut. The car pulled away. Arya pressed her face to the window and watched the house disappear into the dark. Arya. Lucian's voice came through the phone. You still there? Yeah. I'm sorry. For what? For not protecting you better. For putting you in danger. For... Stop. Arya's voice shook. This isn't your fault. Yes, it is. Everything that's happened to you is because of me. No. Everything that's happened to me is because you cared enough to stop. And I'd rather run for the rest of my life with you than live safely without you. Silence on the other end. Then Lucian said very quietly, 4 more months. 121 days. And then I'm coming for you. And I'm never letting you go again. Arya closed her eyes. Promise? I promise. The line went dead. The safe house in the Azores was smaller than the one in Portugal, a cottage on a volcanic hillside overlooking black sand beaches. No neighbors, no roads, just wind and waves and endless sky. Arya and Ethan stayed there for 3 months. No phone, no internet, no contact with the outside world except for weekly check-ins with Lucian through a secure line his contact provided. It was the longest 3 months of her life. Ethan regressed, stopped talking again, started having nightmares, clung to Arya like he was afraid she'd disappear. Arya tried to stay strong, but every night, alone in the dark, she broke. She was so tired of running, so tired of looking over her shoulder, so tired of being afraid. One morning she woke up and realized it had been exactly 2 years since Lucian's sentencing. He was being released today. She walked down to the beach and stood at the water's edge, staring at the horizon, and tried to imagine what happened next. Would he come for them? Would he even know where they were? Would the people hunting them find him first? She didn't have answers. All she had was hope, and it was running out fast. Then she heard it. A helicopter. Distant at first, then closer. Arya spun around and saw it appear over the ridge, black, military grade, heading straight for the cottage. Her heart stopped. This was it. Either rescue or the end. The helicopter touched down on the beach 50 yards away. Sand whipped into clouds. The rotors screamed. The door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dark suit, gray eyes. Lucian. Arya's knees gave out. She collapsed onto the sand and pressed her hands to her mouth to keep from sobbing. He was here. He was real. He was free. Lucian ran toward her, and when he reached her, he dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms like he'd been drowning and she was air. "I'm here," he said into her hair. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm here." Arya couldn't speak. She just held him and cried. After 2 years of waiting, of hoping, of barely surviving, he was finally here. Ethan's voice cut through the wind. "Lucian?" They both looked up. The boy was standing at the cottage door, clutching his rabbit, staring at them with wide, disbelieving eyes. Lucian stood, walked toward Ethan, knelt down in front of him. "Hey, kid," he said softly. "Sorry I'm late." Ethan dropped the rabbit and threw himself into Lucian's arms. Lucian held him tight, and for the first time in 2 years, all three of them were together again. But the reunion lasted less than an hour. Lucian's contact, a man named Pellegrini, appeared from the helicopter with a grim expression. "We need to move," he said. "Now." Lucian looked up. "What happened?" "Someone leaked your release location. There's a hit team en route. ETA 20 minutes. Arya's stomach dropped. "How did they—" "Doesn't matter. We need to go." Lucian stood. His face had gone cold, hard, the same expression he'd worn the night of the attack in Chicago. "Where?" "I have a boat waiting at the marina. We can be in international waters before they arrive." "And then?" "Then we disappear for real. New identities, new lives, no more running." Arya looked at Ethan, at Lucian, at the cottage that had been their prison for 3 months. "What about Elena?" she asked. "And Sophia?" "They're safe. I moved them to a secure location before I came for you." Lucian grabbed Arya's hand. "We're out of time. You trust me?" Arya looked into his eyes. After everything they'd survived, everything they'd lost, everything they'd risked for each other. "Yes," she said. "Then let's go." They ran to the helicopter. Pellegrini fired up the rotors. Lucian strapped Ethan into a seat. Arya climbed in beside him. The helicopter lifted off. Through the window, Arya saw headlights appear on the ridge. 4 vehicles, moving fast. "They're here," she said. Pellegrini pushed the throttle. The helicopter banked hard and shot out over the ocean. Gunfire erupted from below. Bullets pinged off the hull. Ethan screamed. Lucian covered him with his body. Arya grabbed the seat and held on as the helicopter climbed higher, faster, until the island was just a dark shape shrinking behind them. "Are we clear?" Lucian shouted over the rotors. Pellegrini checked his instruments. "For now." "How long until we reach the boat?" 15 minutes. Lucian looked at Arya. "You okay?" She nodded, but her hands were shaking, because she knew this wasn't over, not even close. Whoever wanted Lucian dead wasn't going to stop just because they'd escaped one ambush. They'd keep coming, keep hunting, keep trying until someone died. And Arya was done running. She leaned forward. "Pellegrini." "Who's behind this?" Pellegrini glanced back. "What?" "Who ordered the hit? Who's been hunting us?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." Pellegrini was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "A man named Victor Castellano. He ran the largest organized crime family in the Midwest until Lucian's testimony put half his operation behind bars. He's been in federal custody for the last 18 months, but his son, Marco Castellano, took over the family business, and he wants revenge. Arya's blood ran cold. Marco. The same name as Lucian's dead son. She looked at Lucian. His face was stone, but his hands were shaking. "How do we stop him?" Arya asked. "We don't," Lucian said flatly. "We run, we hide, we survive." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." "That's not a plan, Lucian. That's just dying slowly." "It's the only option we have." "No." Arya grabbed his arm. "There's another option." Lucian stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "We stop running. We face him. We end this." "Are you insane? Marco Castellano has an army, resources, power. We have nothing." "We have the truth. We have your testimony. We have evidence that could put him away for life. We already put his father away. It didn't stop him. Because we didn't finish the job." Arya's voice was hard now, desperate. "We need to take him down completely. Destroy his entire operation. Make sure he can't hurt anyone ever again." Lucian shook his head. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. I'm asking you to fight. One last time. Not for power. Not for revenge. But so we can finally stop looking over our shoulders. If we go after him, people will die. People are already dying." The words echoed in the helicopter. Ethan was watching them both with terrified eyes. Lucian looked at the boy, then at Arya, then out at the dark ocean stretching endlessly below. "If we do this," he said quietly, "there's no going back. We'll be at war with one of the most dangerous crime families in America, and we might not survive. We're not surviving now, we're just breathing." Lucian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something colder, harder, lethal. "Okay," he said. "We do it your way." Pellegrini looked back. "You're serious?" "Yes. You understand what this means? You'll have to go back to Chicago. You'll have to face Marco on his own territory. You'll be walking into a trap." "I know." "And you're willing to risk everything for this?" Lucian looked at Arya, at Ethan, at the fragile broken family he'd somehow found in the wreckage of his life. "Yes," he said. "I'm willing to risk everything." The helicopter cut through the night. Below them, the ocean churned dark and endless. Ahead, Chicago waited, and with it, the final battle that would either set them free or destroy them completely. The boat was waiting at a private marina 40 miles south of the island. A sleek fishing vessel that looked ordinary from the outside, but had reinforced hull plating and enough weapons hidden below deck to start a small war. Pellegrini had contacts everywhere. People who owed Lucian favors from the old days. People who remembered when he'd been the most powerful man in Chicago. People who'd do anything for the right price. They transferred from the helicopter to the boat in under 3 minutes. The pilot disappeared into the night. Pellegrini started the engine. The boat cut through the dark water heading west. Toward America. Toward the war they'd chosen. Arya sat in the cabin with Ethan curled against her side. The boy had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. His rabbit was clutched to his chest. His breathing was soft and steady. She envied him. Lucian stood at the helm with Pellegrini, staring at charts and satellite images spread across the navigation table. They spoke in low voices. Planning, strategizing, preparing for a battle that might kill them all. Arya watched Lucian's profile in the dim light. He looked different now, older, harder. The 2 years in prison had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. His shoulders were tense, his jaw was set. He looked like a man preparing to die, but also like a man who'd finally stopped running from it. "You should sleep," Pellegrini said to Arya without looking up from the charts. "I can't." "Try anyway. We're 12 hours from Chicago. You'll need your strength." Arya didn't move. Lucian glanced back at her. Their eyes met across the cabin. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lucian crossed the space between them and sat down on the bench beside her. Close enough that their shoulders touched. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I can still send you somewhere safe. Somewhere Marco will never find you. We already had this conversation." "I know, but I need to hear you say it one more time. That you understand what we're walking into, that you know we might not walk back out. Arya looked at Ethan, at his peaceful sleeping face, at the life she'd fought so hard to protect. Then she looked at Lucian. I'm not running anymore, she said. Not from Marco. Not from the past. Not from this. We end it together. Or we don't end it at all. Lucian's expression softened. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm and steady. I love you, he said. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it every day for the last 2 years. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Arya Bennett, and whatever happens in Chicago, I need you to know that. Arya's throat tightened. I love you too. Then let's make sure we survive this, because I want a lot more years with you. I want to watch Ethan grow up. I want to marry you under a lemon tree in Portugal. I want all the things I was too afraid to hope for. Arya leaned her head against his shoulder. Deal. They sat like that for a long time, just the two of them and the sleeping boy and the sound of the ocean rushing past the hull. Tomorrow they'd face monsters, but tonight they had this, and it was enough. They reached Chicago at dawn. The city looked the same as Arya remembered, towering buildings, crowded streets, neon signs flickering against gray concrete, but everything felt different now, heavier, like the weight of all her ghosts had followed her back. Pellegrini docked the boat at an abandoned warehouse on the south side. The building looked condemned from the outside. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, chain-link fence falling apart. But inside, it had been converted into a tactical operations center. Computers, weapons, maps. 6 men in dark clothing moving with military precision. Who are they? Arya asked. People who worked for me, Lucian said. People who stayed loyal even after I went to prison. People who want Marco Castellano gone as much as we do. One of the men stepped forward, mid-40s, scarred face, cold eyes. Boss, good to see you. Lucian nodded. Vincent. Status? Marco's holed up in the old Castellano mansion on the north side, 24-hour security, armed guards, surveillance cameras everywhere. He knows you're coming. How many men does he have? Inside the house? Maybe 15, but he's got another 50 scattered across the city ready to move on his signal. Lucian's jaw tightened. So we're outnumbered 3-1. Yeah. What about the feds? Any movement? Vincent shook his head. They've got an open investigation on Marco, but nothing concrete yet. Your testimony helped, but it wasn't enough to bring charges. They're watching him, but they won't move unless they have solid evidence. Then we give them evidence. Arya stepped forward. What kind of evidence? Lucian turned to her. Marco's been running his operation out of that mansion for 18 months. Every deal, every transaction, every order. If we can get inside and access his computers, we can hand the FBI everything they need to put him away forever. That's suicide, Vincent said flatly. Even if we breach the perimeter, even if we get inside, there's no way we're getting out alive. Not if we go in guns blazing, Lucian agreed, but if we're smart, if we use the one thing Marco won't expect, we might have a chance. What won't he expect? Arya asked. Lucian looked at her. Me walking through his front door and asking to negotiate. The room went silent. Vincent stared at Lucian like he'd lost his mind. You want to surrender? No. I want to distract him while you get Arya inside through the service entrance. She downloads everything from his servers. You extract her. I keep Marco talking until the feds arrive with enough evidence to arrest everyone in that house. And what happens to you when they figure out what's happening? Lucian's expression was cold. That's my problem. Lucian, no. Arya grabbed his arm. This is insane. If you walk in there alone, he'll kill you. Maybe, but it's the only way to get you close enough to finish this. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for... It's not a sacrifice. Lucian's voice was gentle but firm. It's a choice. The same choice I made 2 years ago when I stopped in that alley. The same choice I've been making every day since. I choose you. I choose Ethan. I choose a future where you're safe, even if I'm not in it. Arya's vision blurred. Don't talk like you're already dead. I'm not. But if something goes wrong, if this doesn't work, I need you to promise me something. What? Take Ethan and run. Don't look back. Don't try to save me. Just survive. I can't promise that. You have to. No. Arya's voice shook. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. You taught me that. You don't get to change the rules now. Lucian stared at her. Then he turned to Pellegrini. Can you get her in and out without me as a distraction? Pellegrini was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. There's a storm drain that runs under the property, connects to the mansion's basement. Security doesn't monitor it because they think it's too small for anyone to use, but Arya could fit. How long would she have? 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if we're lucky. An extraction? Same route. But if Marco's men figure out what's happening, they'll lock down the entire house. She'd be trapped. Lucian looked at Arya. It's too dangerous. It's our only option. There has to be another way. There isn't, and you know it. Arya stepped closer. You've spent 30 years protecting people, Lucian. Let me protect you for once. Arya, I can do this. I'm small. I'm fast. And I'm tired of watching from the sidelines while you put yourself in danger. Her voice steadied. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going in through that storm drain. I'm getting the evidence. And you're going to wait outside with Ethan and make sure we have a way out when I'm done. Lucian's expression was torn between pride and terror. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but I'm coming with you as far as the drain entrance. And the second something goes wrong, you abort. Understood? Understood. It was a lie. They both knew it. But sometimes lies were the only way to survive the truth. Oh. They moved at midnight. Vincent and his team created a diversion on the west side of the property, a small fire in an abandoned car that drew Marco's security forces away from the perimeter. While they were distracted, Lucian and Arya slipped through the fence and made their way to the storm drain entrance hidden behind overgrown bushes. Ethan stayed behind with Pellegrini in the van parked 3 blocks away. The boy had begged to come, had cried, had grabbed Arya's hand and refused to let go. But Arya had knelt down and looked him in the eyes and told him the truth. I need you to be brave, baby. Just for a little while longer. Can you do that for me? Ethan had nodded. Then he'd whispered, Come back. I will. I promise. Another promise she didn't know if she could keep. Now Arya stood at the entrance to the storm drain with Lucian beside her. The opening was narrow, barely 2 feet wide, dark, wet. It smelled like rust and decay. Lucian handed her a flashlight, a phone with the hacking software already loaded, and a small pistol. You know how to use this? He asked, nodding at the gun. Point and shoot, right? More or less. Arya tucked it into her waistband. Her hands were shaking. Lucian grabbed her face gently. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? Because 2 years ago you stopped for me. Now it's my turn. Lucian's expression cracked. He pulled her close and kissed her. Hard, desperate, like it might be the last time. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. 15 minutes, he said. In and out, no heroics. Same to you. He almost smiled. Then Arya turned and crawled into the storm drain. The darkness swallowed her whole. The drain was worse than she'd imagined. Narrow enough that her shoulders scraped the sides. Low enough that she had to crawl on her hands and knees through 3 inches of freezing water. The smell was overwhelming, rot and chemicals and something dead she didn't want to think about, but she kept moving. The flashlight beam cut through the dark ahead of her. 20 feet, 30, 50. The tunnel seemed endless. Then she saw it. A grate in the ceiling, the access point to the mansion's basement. Arya pulled herself beneath it and pushed. The grate didn't budge. She pushed harder. Her arms burned. Her ribs screamed. But finally the metal shifted with a screech that echoed through the tunnel. She froze. Listened. No shouts. No footsteps. No alarms. She pushed the grate aside and pulled herself up into the basement. The room was dark and cluttered. Storage boxes, old furniture, a boiler that hummed in the corner. Arya moved quickly to the door and listened. Silence. She opened it a crack. A hallway. Empty. Lights flickering overhead. She slipped through and made her way deeper into the house. According to Pellegrini's intel, Marco's office was on the 2nd floor. That's where he kept his computers, his files, his entire operation. Arya found the stairs and climbed. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure someone would hear it, but the house stayed quiet. Most of the guards were outside. The ones inside were probably watching monitors or patrolling the perimeter. She reached the second floor, found the office. The door was locked. Arya pulled out the lockpick set Vincent had given her. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it, but she steadied herself and worked the lock until it clicked. The door swung open. Marco's office was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, expensive art on the walls. And in the center, a massive desk with 3 computer monitors. Arya crossed to the desk and plugged in the phone. The hacking software started running automatically. Progress bar crawling across the screen. 5%, 10%. Come on, 20%. A door slammed somewhere below. Arya's blood turned to ice. Voices echoed through the house. Footsteps. Multiple people. Supposed to be here by now. Check the perimeter again. Boss wants everyone on alert. Arya stared at the progress bar. 40%. Not fast enough. More footsteps. Closer now. Coming up the stairs. 50%. The office door was still open. She couldn't close it without drawing attention. 60%. The footsteps reached the second floor. Arya grabbed the gun from her waistband and pressed herself against the wall beside the door. 70%. A shadow appeared in the hallway. 80%. A man stepped into view. Guard uniform, assault rifle. He glanced into the office and saw the computer. His eyes went wide. Arya didn't think. She stepped forward and brought the gun up and pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening. The man dropped. Alarms erupted throughout the house. 90%. Arya ran to the computer, yanked the phone free. The download was incomplete, but it would have to be enough. Footsteps thundered through the hallway. Arya bolted for the door. 2 guards appeared at the top of the stairs. She fired twice. Both men went down. She ran past them and took the stairs 3 at a time. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred. But she didn't stop. The basement. She just had to reach the basement. More guards flooded into the house from outside, shouting, shooting. The walls exploded with gunfire. Arya hit the first floor and sprinted toward the basement door. A hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun and fired. The guard stumbled back. Arya kept running. She burst through the basement door and slammed it behind her, locked it, heard bodies slamming against it seconds later. She ran to the storm drain and dropped through the grate. Behind her, the door splintered. Arya crawled through the tunnel as fast as her body would move. Water splashed. Her knees screamed. The flashlight beam bounced wildly. She could hear them behind her now, shouting, following. She reached the exit and hauled herself out into the night air. Lucian was there. He grabbed her and pulled her to her feet. Did you get it? Arya held up the phone. Most of it. Good enough. Run. They ran, through the bushes, through the fence, across the empty lot where the van was waiting. Pellegrini threw the door open. Get in. Arya and Lucian dove inside. The van peeled away from the curb. Behind them, Marco's men poured out of the mansion. Gunfire tore through the night. Bullets pinged off the van's armored sides. But they were moving too fast. Within seconds, they disappeared into the maze of Chicago streets. Arya collapsed against the seat, gasping for air. Her hands were covered in blood. Some of it hers, some of it not. Her entire body shook. Ethan crawled into her lap and buried his face in her chest. Lucian sat beside her and pulled them both close. It's over, he said quietly. You did it. Arya looked at the phone in her hand, at the data that would destroy Marco Castellano's empire, at the evidence that would finally set them free. Not yet, she whispered. Not until we finish this. They delivered the data to the FBI at dawn. Pellegrini had contacts there too, agents who'd been trying to build a case against Marco for years, agents who were willing to move fast if they had the evidence to back it up, the evidence Arya had risked her life to steal. Within 6 hours, federal agents raided the Castellano mansion. They found Marco surrounded by his lieutenants, computers still running, files still open. They arrested everyone, seized everything. And by sunset, Marco Castellano was in federal custody facing charges that would put him away for the rest of his life. It was over. Really over. Arya watched the news coverage from a safe house on the outskirts of the city. Ethan sat beside her, drawing pictures of boats and oceans and houses on cliffs. Lucian stood at the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline like he was seeing it for the first time, or the last. What happens now? Arya asked quietly. Lucian turned to look at her. The feds offered me full immunity in exchange for my testimony against Marco and the remaining families. All charges dropped. Clean slate. That's good. Yeah. You don't sound happy about it. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I built an empire in this city. Spent 30 years accumulating power. And for what? So I could watch everything I loved burn to the ground? You also saved lives, Lucian. Mine, Ethan's, Elena's, dozens of others we'll never know about. That doesn't erase what I did to get here. No, but it counts for something. Lucian looked at Ethan, at the boy who'd become his son in every way that mattered, at the life they'd somehow built together out of broken pieces. I want to leave, he said. I want to go back to Portugal. I want to walk away from all of this and never look back. Arya stood and crossed to him. Then let's go. Just like that? Just like that. Lucian pulled her close. What about you? What do you want? Arya thought about the waitress she used to be. The woman who'd been trapped in that alley with nowhere to run. The person she'd become since the night Lucian stopped. I want peace, she said. I want Ethan to grow up somewhere safe. I want to wake up next to you every morning and not wonder if it's the last time. I want ordinary, boring, real. Lucian smiled. It was small and sad and genuine. I don't know if I remember how to do ordinary. Then we'll learn together. They left Chicago 3 days later. No fanfare, no goodbyes. Just the three of them and Pellegrini and Elena boarding a private plane in the middle of the night. Sophia was waiting for them in Portugal. The house on the cliff looked exactly the same. White stone walls, blue shutters, lemon trees blooming in the courtyard, the ocean stretching endlessly beyond. Ethan ran straight to the edge of the cliff and stared out at the water with his arms spread wide like he was trying to hold the whole sky. Arya watched him and felt something crack open in her chest. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in years. Lucian stood beside her. Think we can make this work? I don't know, but I'm willing to try. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. The years passed slowly after that. Beautifully, quietly, peacefully. Ethan healed completely. His nightmares faded. His voice grew stronger. He talked constantly about school, about friends, about the boats he saw from the cliff, about everything and nothing. One afternoon, when he was 12, he asked Lucian to teach him to play chess. They sat in the courtyard under the lemon trees for hours, moving pieces across the board in comfortable silence. When Ethan finally won his first game, he looked up at Lucian with shining eyes and said, Can I call you Dad? Lucian's hand froze over the chessboard. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Then he nodded. Yeah, kid, you can call me Dad. Ethan smiled, and Lucian had to turn away to hide the tears. Arya started a small organization helping abused women and children escape dangerous situations. Nothing big, nothing official. Just a quiet network of safe houses and contacts and people who knew how to disappear when they needed to. She used everything Lucian had taught her, and she saved lives, one at a time, just like he had. Elena stayed with them for 5 years before she decided to return to Italy to be closer to her grandchildren. She left with tears in her eyes and promises to visit. Pellegrini eventually retired and bought a small vineyard in the hills. He sent them wine every Christmas with notes that said things like, Still not dead. Surprising, I know. Sophia became the soul of the household. She cooked. She laughed. She told stories about her youth that made Ethan's eyes go wide. She lived with them for 20 years before she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93. They buried her under the lemon trees, and Lucian cried like he'd lost his mother. Arya and Lucian married on a spring afternoon when the lemon trees were in full bloom. It was a small ceremony, just family. Ethan stood as best man. Elena flew in from Italy. Pellegrini showed up in a suit that looked like it hadn't been worn since the 80s. They said their vows under the trees with the ocean crashing below. Lucian's hand shook when he slid the ring onto Arya's finger. And when the officiant said, You may kiss the bride, he pulled her close and whispered, Thank you for stopping me from driving away. Arya smiled through her tears. Thank you for stopping in the first place. Oh, they had a daughter 3 years later. They named her Maggie. She had Arya's eyes and Lucian's stubborn jaw and a laugh that filled the entire house with light. Ethan adored her. He carried her everywhere, taught her to paint, read her stories, protected her with the fierce devotion of someone who knew what it meant to lose family. Watching them together, Arya finally understood what Lucian had been searching for all those years. Redemption. Not the kind that came from saving strangers, but the kind that came from being present, from showing up, from choosing love over power every single day. Decades passed. Ethan grew up and became a doctor. He met a woman named Sarah who made him laugh. They got married, had children of their own. Maggie became an artist. Her paintings hung in galleries across Europe. She never forgot where she came from or the sacrifices her parents had made to give her a life worth living. Lucian's hair turned silver, then white. His hands developed a tremor he tried to hide, but he never stopped working in the garden, never stopped teaching chess to his grandchildren, never stopped looking at Arya like she was the most remarkable thing he'd ever seen. Arya's hair grayed too. Her knees ached in the mornings. But she still walked the cliff path every evening at sunset, still wrote letters to women who needed help, still believed that one act of mercy could change a life, because she'd lived it. On a summer evening when Arya was 68 and Lucian was 72, they sat together in the courtyard watching their grandchildren play in the grass. The sun was setting over the ocean. The sky was painted gold and purple and pink. Lucian reached for Arya's hand. She took it without looking. Their fingers laced together automatically. Perfectly. Like they'd been doing it for a lifetime. Because they had. "Do you ever think about that night?" Lucian asked quietly. "The alley in Chicago?" Arya smiled. "Every day." "Do you regret it?" "Which part? Getting in your car, running to Portugal, breaking into Marco's mansion?" "Any of it." Arya turned to look at him, really look at him, at the lines in his face, at the silver in his hair, at the man who'd saved her life and then spent 40 years proving he deserved the second chance she'd given him. "No," she said. "I don't regret a single moment." Lucian's eyes were wet. "I was so close to driving away that night." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." "Why not?" Lucian was quiet for a long time. Then he said very softly, "Because something inside me knew that if I kept driving, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And I'd already lived with enough regret." Arya squeezed his hand. "That was the whole deal, Lucian. You stopped because you could, and that one choice changed everything." They sat in silence, watching the sun sink into the ocean. Somewhere in the garden, their grandchildren were laughing. Somewhere in the house, Maggie was painting. Somewhere in the city, Ethan was saving lives the same way his father had taught him. And here, on this cliff overlooking endless blue water, two broken people who'd found each other in the darkest moment of their lives were finally, truly at peace. "I love you," Lucian said. "I love you too." The sun disappeared below the horizon. The stars came out. And for the first time in their lives, neither of them was running from anything. They were just here, together, alive, free. Years later, when Lucian's hands shook too much to hold a chess piece and his breath came in labored gasps, Arya sat beside his bed and held his hand the same way she had in the courtyard. Ethan was there. Maggie was there. The grandchildren waited quietly in the hallway. Lucian looked at Arya with tired eyes and said, "I wish we had more time." Arya's voice was steady. "We had enough." "Was it worth it? Everything we went through?" "Every second." Lucian smiled. "Good. Because I wouldn't change a thing." His eyes closed, his breathing slowed, and Arya held him as he slipped away quietly, peacefully, surrounded by the family he thought he'd never have again. They buried him under the lemon trees beside Sophia. Arya stood at the grave long after everyone else had left, staring at the simple stone marker with his name and the words she'd chosen. Lucian Moretti. He stopped. Simple. True. Everything. Ethan found her there at sunset. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You okay, Mom?" Arya nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." "He loved you, you know that, right?" "I know." "And he was happy. At the end, you gave him that." Arya looked at her son, the boy who'd been silent for so long, the man who'd found his voice again because someone had cared enough to stop. "He gave me everything," she said quietly, even when he thought he had nothing left to give. They stood together as the sun set over the ocean, and Arya understood finally what Lucian had been trying to tell her all those years ago in the study when they'd both been drowning in grief. Sometimes a single act of mercy was enough to rewrite an entire life. Sometimes stopping was the bravest thing you could do. And sometimes, just sometimes, broken people could build something beautiful together if they were willing to take the first step. Lucian had taken that step, and Arya had followed, and together they'd found their way home. The end. Arya Bennett lived another 15 years after Lucian's death. She spent them exactly the way he would have wanted, helping people, loving her family, sitting on the cliff at sunset and remembering the man who'd changed her life in a dark Chicago alley on a rainy night that felt like a lifetime ago. When she finally passed away at 83, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, her last words were simple. "Tell him I'm coming." They buried her beside Lucian under the lemon trees. And if you visit that cliff in Portugal today, you'll find two simple stones side by side, overlooking the endless blue ocean. Two people who'd been strangers once. Two people who'd saved each other. Two people who'd proven that even in the darkest moments, even when the world was burning down around you, even when you had every reason to keep driving, sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stop and choose mercy and see what happened next.